My father's first words on entering Westminster Abbey yesterday were a pledge of service. It was a pledge to continue to serve, because for over 50 years, in every corner of the UK, across the Commonwealth and around the world,
The British royal family just experienced a power shift so quiet, so surgical, that most of the world completely missed it. No announcement, no press conference, no dramatic confrontation in a palace corridor. Just a name, gone, removed from a financial document that almost nobody reads. And with that single disappearance, Prince William sent a message to Queen Camilla that shook her to her core. A message she has spent 20 years dreading. A message that said, in language she understands better than anyone, your time is up. But to understand why this moment is so significant, why insiders say Camilla is genuinely terrified right now, you need to go back, way back, to a September afternoon in Scotland, to a breath that stopped, to a chain reaction that fired off across the entire British monarchy in a single instant and set everything you are about to watch in motion. Because the story you think you know about William and Camilla, you only know half of it. The moment everything changed. September 8, 2022, Balmoral Castle, Scotland. Queen Elizabeth II took her final breath.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. It says the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon.
And the world stopped. Flags lowered, bells rang. Millions wept in streets across the globe for a woman who had held the British monarchy together through 7 decades of turbulence, scandal, and change. The grief was real. The loss was enormous. But inside the royal family, something else was happening simultaneously. Something that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with power. The instant Elizabeth died, Charles became king. Everyone knew that was coming. Everyone had prepared for that. But what almost nobody focused on, what barely made a single headline in those overwhelming early days of mourning, was what happened to William in that same exact moment. William, at 40 years old, became the Duke of Cornwall, automatically, instantly, by centuries of British law that has never once been rewritten since the day it was created. The second his father became king, William became the sole owner of one of the oldest, most powerful, and most valuable private estates on planet Earth. So what exactly landed in his hands that afternoon? The Duchy of Cornwall is worth $1.2 billion. Let that number sit with you for a moment. 1.2 billion. It covers 135,000 acres of land spread across 23 counties in England and Wales. It includes almost the entire Isles of Scilly, those breathtaking islands sitting off the southwestern tip of Britain. It includes half of Dartmoor in Devon, ancient farms, historic castles, tenant properties, holiday cottages, decades of layered financial investments. The estate was created in 1337 by King Edward III, designed specifically for his son, Edward the Black Prince, who became the first ever Duke of Cornwall. The rule was written once and has never changed. The estate belongs to the monarch's eldest son and heir to the throne. Nearly 700 years of history, and now it belonged to William. By 2025, William was drawing $30 million a year from this estate. He pays tax on it voluntarily, because the law does not even require him to. Think about that. A man with $1 billion estate, not legally obligated to pay a single penny in tax, choosing to do so anyway. That is a man who is very carefully thinking about optics, about legacy, about how history will remember him. But here is where the story turns darker, and this is the part that almost everyone missed. The Duchy of Cornwall was the exact same estate that had been funding Charles's household for decades. While Charles was Duke of Cornwall, this estate generated his income, funded his lifestyle, funded his properties, funded his private projects and his public ambitions. And during those same years, all of those years, Charles was conducting the affair with Camilla that tore his marriage to Princess Diana completely apart. The affair that Diana described in her own words as making her feel like there were 3 people in her marriage. And now the estate that had funded all of it belonged to Diana's son. What Diana never said out loud. Before we go any further, pause for a second and ask yourself this question. How does a woman feel when she knows the most powerful man in her life is choosing someone else over and over and over again? Not once, not twice, but for years, knowing it, living inside it, smiling for cameras while carrying it alone. Diana did not just experience infidelity. She experienced a systematic erosion of herself. What the public saw was the glamour, the gowns, the charity work, the warmth she had with ordinary people that nobody could manufacture or fake. What the public did not see was what was happening behind closed doors in those grand, echoing palace rooms. According to insiders, Diana would pull staff aside, fear swimming in her eyes, and ask them quietly, "Am I beautiful enough?" When they told her yes, she would shake her head and whisper back, "Don't lie to the princess," like a small girl forcing back tears. A woman the entire world called beautiful could not see it in herself anymore, because the man she married had made her feel invisible. There were nights when palace staff heard muffled crying coming from her room at 3 in the morning. Many nights she slept in a separate room from Charles, alone in one of the grandest buildings in the world, completely invisible to the public, completely hollow inside. People close to her described her as a person slowly disappearing from the inside. 2 young boys watched this happen to their mother. They did not have the language for it then. They could not have fully understood it then. But children understand far more than adults give them credit for. They see the tears. They feel the cold in a room when 2 people who are supposed to love each other have stopped. They notice the absence. William was one of those boys. And then there is one more detail. The Duchy of Cornwall was designed specifically by Edward III, so that heirs could never be financially controlled or pressured by the reigning monarch. William owning it meant he was financially independent of his own father, independent of the palace machine, independent of everyone. No financial leverage could ever be held over his head. And there was someone inside that estate who was about to find out exactly what that independence looked like in practice. The woman on the payroll. Her name is Annabel Elliot. And if you have never heard of her, that is precisely the point. Annabel is Queen Camilla's younger sister, and for nearly 20 years, from 2005 right up until the moment William became Duke of Cornwall, she was collecting a royal paycheck funded directly by the Duchy of Cornwall estate. She had been hired to design the interiors of Duchy properties across Cornwall, Wales, and the Isles of Scilly. Her work was genuine and widely respected. She was named the 5th most influential female interior designer in the United Kingdom in 2014. She designed the interiors of 12 holiday cottages on the Isles of Scilly. She worked on properties at Restormel Castle. She transformed the Llywelyn Wormod estate in Wales. She converted a rundown barn at Dumfries House in Scotland into a lavish guest house used for weddings and private events. Her fingerprints were all over some of the most beautiful properties in the entire royal collection. But here is the question you need to sit with. How did she get the contract in the first place? There was no competitive tender process, no open application, no panel of judges reviewing multiple candidates. She was hired because her sister married the man who owned the estate. That was the entire basis of the arrangement. Full stop. And if you think that is where the story ends, you are not even close. Because long before the design contracts, long before the royal payroll, there was something else buried beneath the surface, something far more personal, far more damaging. When Charles was still married to Diana, and the affair with Camilla had to be kept completely hidden from the world, they needed somewhere safe to meet, somewhere isolated, somewhere that would never attract attention. That somewhere was Annabel's house, a quiet country home in the village of Stour Provost in Dorset, private, remote, completely off the radar. Weekend after weekend, Annabel gave her sister and the Prince of Wales the space, the cover, and the protection they needed to continue an affair that was quietly destroying Diana's life. Now ask yourself, when Annabel was later handed that lucrative duchy contract, was that a coincidence, or was that a reward? When William finally had the power to answer that question, he did not hesitate. The firing that shook the palace. William did not hold a press conference. He did not release a statement. He did not summon anyone to a meeting or make any kind of formal announcement. He simply waited. He waited for the Duchy of Cornwall to publish its routine annual financial accounts, a dry, technical document that almost nobody outside royal financial circles ever reads. And when that document was released, something was different. Annabel Elliott's name was gone. 20 years of royal employment ended without a single public word spoken by the man who ended it. The message was deliberate and devastating precisely because of how quietly it was delivered. Royal expert Emmy Griffiths addressed the situation carefully, the kind of careful language people reach for when they are trying not to say something too directly. She confirmed that since William had taken over as Duke of Cornwall, he had removed Annabel from the payroll, and that this had caused, as she put it, a few ripples and a few headlines. The official response from sources was equally measured. They said the decision was no reflection on Annabel's work. Of course, it was not about her work. Everyone inside the royal family knew that. A separate royal source was considerably less diplomatic. This source said William's move sent a message that he wanted to cut away the royal hangers-on and reduce the lavish spending his father had built up during his time managing the Duchy. Cut away the royal hangers-on. Remember that phrase. That is how William's inner circle described the arrangement Charles had created for his wife's family. And simultaneously, as Annabel's name disappeared from the payroll, William was filling the duchy with people he had chosen himself. He brought in Harry Aubrey Fletcher and William Van Cutsem, both personal friends and godparents to his children, Prince George and Prince Louis. Out went Camilla's family. In came William's people. Every position Charles had filled with someone connected to his world was now being reviewed. Every arrangement built around Camilla's comfort was being examined. The financial cost of removing Annabel was modest. Her annual salary sat somewhere between £19,000 and £82,000 against a £1.2 billion estate. Those numbers are almost nothing, but the symbolism was enormous, and everyone inside the palace felt it. This was not about money. This was about territory, about authority, about who this estate now belonged to, and about who was going to decide its future. The original promise and how it died. To understand the full weight of what William is doing, you have to go back even further, back to before the wedding, back to a private conversation between a father and his two sons that most people have forgotten about. Before Charles married Camilla in April 2005, William and Harry went to their father privately. They made one quiet, specific request. Harry later wrote about it in his memoir, Spare. They told Charles directly, "We support you. We endorse Camilla. We will welcome her into the family. Just please do not marry her. Just be together." The boys knew what a wedding would do. It would drag their mother's name through every newspaper in the world. It would force the whole country to compare Diana to the woman who had been in their marriage from the beginning. Neither of them wanted that. Charles listened to both of his sons, and then he married her anyway. To manage the public reaction, Buckingham Palace made a specific public announcement. When Charles eventually became king, Camilla would be known as Princess Consort. She would never be queen. That was the deal. That was the promise, made publicly. William accepted it. He attended the wedding, shook hands, smiled for cameras, and buried whatever he was actually feeling somewhere deep and private where no one could reach it. Then in February 2022, Queen Elizabeth released a message marking her Platinum Jubilee. Buried inside it was a decision that rewrote everything. She expressed that it was her sincere wish for Camilla to be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. And then came the coronation in May 2023, and something quieter still. The word consort simply began to disappear. Until one day, it was gone entirely. Camilla was no longer Queen Consort. She was simply Queen. The exact title both princes had once stood in a room and asked their father to prevent. One source later confirmed what many had suspected. She was never going to settle for anything less. William had watched every version of the original promise get rewritten, but the resentment, according to sources, was deep, carefully maintained, and going absolutely nowhere. The Whisper campaign and the press war. Here is something that needs to be said directly, because it explains everything that came after. Camilla did not simply wait for her position to grow. She worked for it, actively, strategically, and with a very specific set of tools. When she wanted Charles to see William or Harry in a negative light, she would go to him privately and shape the narrative. She fed Charles her assessments of his son's shortcomings in moments when nobody else was present. Royal biographer Christopher Anderson confirmed this, that Camilla was known to do exactly this, working on Charles's perception of his own children, slowly and quietly from the inside. But there was another operation running in parallel. Camilla had cultivated relationships with key British journalists over years. Her team used those relationships as instruments. When she needed to look good, stories appeared. When she needed someone else to look bad, those stories appeared too. Her team planted the false story that Meghan had made Kate cry in the days before the 2018 royal wedding. That story tore through the British press and caused genuine damage inside the family. Everyone in the palace knew it was a lie. Charles's team refused to correct it. William and Harry went directly to their father and told him what his communications team was doing. Charles shouted at them, told William he was being paranoid. Think about what that moment represents. A father choosing his wife's narrative over his own son's reality. A man who had already broken a promise to both his boys about the title, now telling the elder son that what he was seeing clearly, with his own eyes, was not real. William was not paranoid. He was paying attention, and he was storing every single thing away, carefully, waiting for the day he had the power and the position to respond in the only language that mattered. Christmas and the public shove. The Duchy of Cornwall was not the only battlefield, not even close. Every year, the royal family gathers at Sandringham for Christmas. It is one of the most important and most sacred traditions inside the British monarchy. Sandringham is where generations of royals have spent the holiday together. It is also, and this matters deeply, an estate that William will one day own. Camilla decided to invite her son, Tom Parker Bowles, her child from her first marriage, to join the family Christmas there. Reports emerged that a furious William had made his position completely clear. He would not attend the main Christmas gathering if Tom was present. Camilla invited Tom anyway. Tom later confirmed to the Telegraph that his mother had personally asked him to come, and William did not attend the main gathering. He stayed with Kate and their children at Anmer Hall, their own home on the Sandringham estate, and spent Christmas there instead. Camilla had just forced the future King of England out of his own family Christmas, at an estate he will one day inherit, by inviting her son and refusing to back down an inch. And then, in September 2025, the tension broke the surface in public. During Donald Trump's state visit to Windsor Castle, Kate fell into easy, natural conversation with Melania Trump. The two women connected warmly. It was the kind of moment that happens organically when two people genuinely get along. And then, from the side, Camilla stepped in. What happened next lasted only a second, but it was seen by millions. Camilla raised her hand and made a short, firm motion toward Kate. It was not verbal, but it was completely unmistakable. Body language expert Judy James described what she saw without flinching. It looked, she said, like Camilla was pulling rank, almost shooing Kate away. The clip spread everywhere. People slowed it down, replayed it, watched it again, because what it showed was uncomfortable in a way that was difficult to articulate but impossible to ignore. The current queen publicly dismissing the future queen in front of world leaders, on camera, for the entire planet to see. Behind the scenes, the reaction inside William's circle was immediate. One source said it hit him hard. That wasn't just awkward. That crossed a line, because this wasn't a private disagreement playing out in a palace corridor anymore. This was a public message, sent to the entire world. The dying king and the request. William ignored. King Charles III, still battling cancer, had started having quiet conversations with his son about what would happen after he was gone. One insider described the tone as urgent and personal. The message from Charles to William was direct. Leave Camilla alone. Protect her. Don't push her out. A dying king, spending what could be his final years trying to secure his wife's future by appealing privately to the one man with the power to define it. And William's answer? It was not given in words. It was given in a payroll report, in a Christmas he did not attend, in the names of the friends he hired to replace the woman his stepmother had placed inside his estate. Every action William has taken has been the answer to his father's request, and none of those actions have been the answer Charles was hoping for. Charles stripped Diana of her Royal Highness title after their divorce. William was old enough to understand what was happening. He watched the mechanism work. He saw how a title could be taken away from a woman who had done nothing wrong. He knows every inch of how that process functions, and now he holds the controls. The trap Camilla built herself. Here is what makes Camilla's situation genuinely terrifying in a way that has nothing to do with gossip and everything to do with cold, hard reality. Right now, her life looks completely secure. She moves between Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, Sandringham, and Balmoral. She has official duties. She has the full support and protection of her husband, the King. She holds the title Her Majesty the Queen. She is patron or president of more than 90 charities. From the outside, her position looks solid and untouchable, but every single thing she has is tied to one man, and that man has cancer. Here is what most people do not fully understand about Sandringham and Balmoral. They are not government properties. They are not crown assets managed by an institution. They are privately owned, the same way a family home is privately owned. Queen Elizabeth inherited both from her father, King George VI. When Elizabeth died, they passed directly to Charles. When Charles dies, they pass directly to William. Balmoral is worth $140 million. Sandringham is worth $65 million. Together, more than $200 million in private property that Camilla currently walks through, sleeps in, and calls home. None of it belongs to her, not in any legal sense, not in any document that exists anywhere. These homes will belong to the man who just removed her sister from his payroll without a single public word. And then there is the detail that makes her situation almost impossible to escape. Camilla once had one piece of property that was completely and entirely hers. Ray Mill House, a private home in Wiltshire she had owned before she ever married Charles. She used to talk about it with real warmth. She called the garden there the best therapy in the world. It was her retreat, her private ground, the one place where she could close the door and simply be herself, away from the weight of royal life. She sold it. She sold the only home that was truly hers. The reasons given were that she wanted to commit fully to her royal life and her role beside Charles. But the consequence of that decision is devastating and completely irreversible. When Charles dies, Camilla will have no private property of her own anywhere in the world. She will live wherever William decides she should live. A woman who spent 20 years engineering her way to the very top of the most powerful family in Britain, who managed the press, shaped narratives, outmaneuvered rivals, will now depend entirely on the goodwill of the man she helped push out of his own family Christmas. She built the trap herself. She walked into it with her eyes open. And now the door has closed, so here is the question, and it is one worth sitting with. Is what William is doing justice, or is it revenge? Is there even a meaningful difference when the person on the receiving end helped destroy your mother, when you watched her cry behind closed doors as a small boy and grew up carrying that knowledge quietly for decades? William has not raised his voice. He has not gone to the press. He has not written a memoir. He has made a series of quiet, surgical, perfectly legal decisions, each one carrying a message that Camilla understands completely and cannot challenge publicly without exposing everything she has spent years hiding. The empire she helped build, piece by piece, appointment by appointment, whisper by whisper, is being dismantled in exactly the same silence she used to construct it. A payroll report, a Christmas not attended, a gesture on a lawn in front of the world. And somewhere in a palace she does not own, in a home she cannot legally claim, Queen Camilla is watching the future arrive. And she knows exactly whose hands it is in. Because here is the truth that nobody inside that palace will say out loud. Her title, her confidence, her sense of self, while the world applauded the woman who replaced her. He was a teenager carrying grief so heavy it would have broken most adults. And he never once forgot a single detail of how it happened, or who made it happen. Every quiet move he makes now is the answer to something Camilla did years ago. He is not reacting. He is executing, patiently, precisely, on his own timeline. The question is not whether William will act. The question is how far he will go.